Hello, very good morning to you and welcome to Newsfile. This is your most authoritative news analysis show across the continent. I'm sure about that. I think you also agree with me, and stay tuned for yet another exciting and engaging edition of the show. My name is Samson Ladi Anyani, as usual, sitting in for your regular host, Kojo Opong Nkrumah, and today we are looking at three very critical issues. I'll try and merge two, make them one. So we'll look at two broad matters, very interesting issues. Is ex-President Jerry Rawlings being opportunistic by endorsing President Mahama, or did he really endorse him? And he says that President Mahama has revived the ruling NDC's chances at retaining power in the December elections. Will this hurt the NDP? That's the new baby born out of the NDC. Now, I'm asking whether it will hurt the NDP because President Rawlings, who has endorsed Mahama, is alleged to support his wife to be the NDP standard bearer for the polls. But is President Mahama, John Mahama, bothered at all about this after naming Emisa Arthur to run with him? Is this the pair to deliver the NDC's one-touch election victory agenda? Those are the questions that I'll be seeking in the two merged into one, topic to discuss. Let's go to the second issue that we'll be looking at. Well, you've heard about the CI and the injunction that has been dismissed. The Supreme Court declines invitation to interfere with the work of Parliament towards legalization of the 45 new constituencies. The court has since Wednesday become functus officio. So, in our own court today, we will examine the decision to dismiss the injunction application to stop Parliament from dealing with the controversial CI 78, pending the determination of the suit or several suits challenging the legality of the creation. We'll look at all of that, and especially what the NPP is going to do after here. And you know that Parliament has become a very interesting house. Numbers are changing. You're told of a lesser number on the day of sitting, and the next day you're told of a higher number that's been announced. Quorum or no quorum, things are being done. Very finally, the NPP has some issues with Dr. Kojo Afarijan, Ghana's Electoral Commission chairman. Well, the NPP's spokesperson, one of his spokespersons, he's in charge of elections in the party, Dr. Matthew Opoku Prempeh, is the MP for Menchia. He is taking issue with the Electoral Commissioner for what he calls selective registration of Ghanaians living abroad because of the repeal of the PNDC law that gave the EC the power to do that, and now that having been replaced by ROPAL, the EC should be registering every Ghanaian living abroad and not only those at the diplomatic missions and students in the diaspora. We'll find answers to all of these issues as my guests. I unveil them to you in the next minute or so. My guests are seated. I will introduce them to you shortly, but you know, as always, your views and comments and questions are welcome onto the show via 1422 and 1760. 1422 and 1760. Those are the text lines. You can also send us a message, post a message on our Facebook wall. That is Joy FM. Facebook/Joy FM. Now do that, and also you can send us a message by email, newsfile@myjoyonline.com. Newsfile, one word, at myjoyonline.com. But did I forget about this other very important issue that has come up for discussion in the course of the week? Gbevlo Latte, the National Security Chief, has he been listening to a different tape? That is my question. Or he's been listening to the real Yao Jan tape. Without prejudice, let's have your views on that issue as well. Now, my guests are seated, and this show is brought to you by the kindest sponsorship of MTN Everywhere You Go, Bank of Africa, and Hisense. Now, Abdul Malik Kukubaku Jr., he's a regular panelist on this show. is a professor in his own rights, I'm told. Good morning and welcome, Managing Editor of the New Crusading Guide newspaper.
I love your promotion.
It's a promotion I have borrowed from many other places. Kofi Adams, he speaks for the ex-president, Jerry John Rawlings. Good morning and welcome to the show, my brother. And also, Yao Boabeng Asamoah, he is a lawyer. He's also Deputy Communications Director for the New Patriotic Party, the largest opposition party that is so sure of victory in this election. But John Mahama says it's one touch for him. So how will they do that? All right. We will shortly be joined also by Yao Edu Asari. He is the swagger man, MP for Adenta. Kojo Edu Asari, sorry, Kojo Edu Asari. He is also a member of government's communication team, I understand. He will join us quickly. Now, gentlemen, once again, welcome to the show. And as I told you, let us have your text messages, your messages through Facebook, and also through Newsfile at myjoyonline.com. Now, straightforward, we go to a very first issue for discussion. The ex-president Rawlings, did he or did he not endorse President John Dramani Mahama for the 2012 elections? He has spoken to the effect that the president has brought a certain revival to the NDC's chances of retaining power in the December elections. Did he or did he not endorse John Mahama? And if he did, what does that mean for the party? There are suggestions by some analysts that he's being opportunistic. Is that too harsh a criticism of the former president? I'd like to start, first of all, with the man who speaks for him. Kofi, well, I have not quite followed how you have interpreted what the former president has said, but I'm sure that he must have also spoken to you afterwards. Did or did he not endorse the president?
Thank you, Samson, and good morning to your viewers and listeners who are listening to 99.7 this morning. And let me say that when an elderly person speaks sometime and of a stature of President Rawlings, and in the political atmosphere that we find ourselves, with all parties competing for either an endorsement or, for lack of other word, a disendorsement or the situation for them to pick on what he says, you will get all manner of interpretations. It's like even the word of God written in the Bible, that is, we know God to be one. But just Sunday, move through the churches and hear various men of God preach and interpret the same verse in different direction. That is what has happened in this circumstance. That word written, which is being interpreted by various men of God to their congregants, is the same, is the truth, but the interpretation will always vary. President Rawlings have said something that all of us seated here, whether MPP, NDC, CPP, NDP, non-partisan, editors-in-chief, and all will agree that something has happened in this country in terms of political fortunes and political situation. We have had cause. I have appeared on a program with a colleague not too long ago and was bringing out an analysis that a particular civil society group has done, which sought to suggest that between April, May, and June, they did an analysis and brought out the visibility of presidential candidates elected at that time. And our flag bearer then, His Excellency, the late President Professor J.E.A. Mills, had a minimal visibility and coverage. And I believe that this is worrying for all. You cannot say the same today, that President Mahama is not very visible on the ground. You can also not say that the death of our late president, in a way, generated and reduced the attacks on the governing party in a way and gave them room to be able to reorganize and readjust. I'm not therefore surprised that His Excellency President Mahama took advantage to advise, if not to warn, his communicators to check and recheck themselves the way they communicate, because they have heavily contributed to the situation in the past. I'm also not surprised that at the Ojra Festival quite recently, he had cause to either to call it apologize or seek for a cessation of fire between some religious bodies and some other persons within the party that he is leading. All this, in a way, serves as a spark, which President Rawlings was admitting to. You can turn the spark to a fire that will catch the whole country, or the spark can go off. It depends on how you handle the spark. But the truth is that...
words, he says that the emergence of John Mahama has also added a spark to the governing party and has brought about the possibility of the ruling party also winning the election. And this is a party, he said, was already in the ditch as far as the elections were concerned.
You realize that truth, as somebody would put it, we have two types of truths. We have concrete truth and we have relative truth. Samson, you are a man and you remain a man until maybe the next world, I don't know whether God will decide that if we will come again, men will be turned to women. That is concrete truth. If I say Samson Ladi Ayenini is a man, he remains a man. If Dr. Nkrumah, Kweku's idol, even though these days I don't see him on CPP's.
You mean our idol?
Okay.
Ghana
and CPP's founder, even though I don't see him on a lot of the CPP platform, he says it's a moribund movement now.
The approach he wants the CPP to adopt, they don't seem to
adapt that. So they are becoming moribund.
Win parliamentary seat before they concentrate on.
So they are becoming moribund.
For record purposes, I haven't said that.
No, you haven't used moribund.
Remain an active member of the CPP. I'm not an office holder.
Okay.
But that's my party.
I've not said you said so.
All right.
Why don't I have a right to interpret?
Kofi, come back to the substantive issue. Let's go to the substantive issue.
So, when Dr. Nkrumah said in somewhere before independence, or just after independence, that the independence of Ghana was meaningless unless it is linked to the total liberation of Africa. At that time, that was the truth. The circumstances, the time, demanded that our independence. But today, Samson, that is not the truth any longer. So we have what we call relative truth. That is why I've taken the trouble to take you through what has happened. If you compare the activities of the ruling party then and now, the visibility and the presence of its flag bearer, the comments of its flag bearer, the direction of its flag bearer, the readiness to kind of, whether you will say it is an indirect rebuke or even a direct rebuke, or an indication that you will not do that, by his public apology of a sort, is completely different from what...
We're dealing with an ex-president and the founder of the party who had problems with the party and appears to still have problems with the party. And after a long period, he emerges at the party's special, conference to endorse President Mahama as a flag bearer. At this point, he makes suggestions about what to be done, what ought to be done, to bring the party back to winning ways. You hear him shortly after that saying the party has gotten a spark and now appears to be in a position to win.
It tells you that he didn't have a problem with the party. And I kept making this argument, but the media would not want to bring it out, that President Rawlings didn't have problem with NDC party. He had problem with some leadership. The party is bigger than its people occupying position. Those occupying positions, they are transient. Today you may be a general secretary, tomorrow you will not. Today you may be a flag bearer, tomorrow you will not. Today you may be a president lucky to have emerged from the party, tomorrow you will not. The party is supposed to grow beyond all these persons, but its founding principles, its values is what we must hold dear to. But it looked more like it got to a point that we sought to extricate ourselves from these principles and values, and we're rather focusing more on a person, on this, on that, and that he had a problem with, and spoke strongly about it.
And the very recent comments that we are discussing today, I find, excuse me, to be very positive, clear endorsement of the president.
I'm saying that who doesn't admit, even the opponent, they will be shooting themselves in the foot if they fail to admit that the emergence of a new candidate for the NDC has kind of generated some spark. One of the key things the opponent was using is they were not seeing the president and the flag bearer. When sometimes a disaster happens somewhere, they expect to see that the leader will show face, and they will be citing other countries. Obama stopped this to appear somewhere. Obama did this to do this. This one showed his face here. But we are not seeing. Today, the same thing cannot be said of the current president. Just yesterday or the day before yesterday, he returned from the northern regions where he was touring the disaster zones. So you cannot hold him and say that there is disaster and he's not visible. These are the truth that President Rawlings is talking about. But he did not leave it there. He also indicated, among many things, that I thought that as a media, as a group, we should also all be interested, irrespective of who emerges, that spend some good time to succeed in fighting internal corruption, at least between 30 to 40%. And that if you remain just a driver, driving in front, just directing the canoe and not spending some time to see whether there are some people sitting in the canoe who are creating holes, you'll be directing the canoe all right to a point you want it to go, but you may not reach the destination because people have created holes in it, resulting in the canoe sinking. And that is to do with fighting corruption, which is very key, which is very important, that we all must advertise our minds on and deal with.
I'll come back to you to take your bit on what he's saying and how that puts the party in sort of a good light, and what he's alleged to be doing. What he's alleged to be doing for his wife in respect of the NDP.
You raised an issue even earlier. I've heard some analysts talk about political opportunism and this. Maybe the person don't know who he's analyzing about. And I had a chance to comment on this earlier on when I appeared on one program. That's President Rawlings that you're talking about. Even when he was head of state, Kweku is good at researching some of these materials. And candidate, he will speak the truth irrespective of the damage it does to his organization or to any other
I think the accusation of being a political opportunism is because it came to a point where he was felt to have almost lost it with the party, that, you know, he was almost ostracized, you know, from the party. And so now this gives him the opportunity to warm himself, you know, into the party. So that's what he's doing. That's why they say it's opportunism.
I don't think he needs to warm himself into the party. His, if you want to call it that way, his first appearance after your claim of having problem with the party, and I insist it's not the party, but the few leadership, because I go around and interact with the people. You saw the reaction, the response at the Baba Yara Sports Stadium. It tells you this is not somebody that have lost touch with the people on the ground who makes up the party. The leadership may behave in a certain way, different from what the rank and file out there are feeling. And that all I want to say is that nobody can accuse President Rawlings of political opportunism. He's still stuck to the point. He spoke the real truth, the hard truths that all must believe in. If the NDC as a party want to learn from it and pick it up and push it further, they can do so. If the MPP will also sit down and realize that, look, it is true that the selection of a new person had brought some fire into our main opponent we are fighting, it is up to them. If they want to deceive themselves, it is up to them. He has spoken.
Thank you very much, Kofi Adams. Like I said, I'll return to you on the other aspect of this particular development. This is Newsfile, and as I told you before, it's brought to you and with the kind sponsorship of MTN Everywhere You Go and Bank of Africa. Now, Yabwa Bing Asamoah, the NPP's Deputy Communications Director, it appears that what the former president has done is beginning to send shivers down the spine of the NPP. You are beginning to shiver and becoming afraid that you are losing the battle even before it started in earnest.
The battle has always been there. The battle to rescue the economy and deliver standard of living for Ghanaians worthy of politicians. So there is no new battle. It's a battle for the minds of the people about whether politicians are leading them. But undoubtedly, Council, Rawlings makes news. Rawlings makes news. Nobody can take that away from him. Question is, what kind of news? Who does the news impact? To what effect and purpose? And for the purpose, today we are being told that Rawlings has unequivocally endorsed John Mahama. And because of that, shivers down our spines, because what the effect is that His Excellency John Mahama has won the election. Let's go to what he said in the House of Chiefs in the vote.
The thing is that you will be the greatest beneficiaries if the former president did not support the party going into the elections.
It depends. It depends on who he's addressing. If Rawlings says things in public, which the Ghanaian electorate must weigh, do the NDC core vote feel elated because they then consolidate? Or does it bring the floating vote to the NDC? It's as simple as that.
All right, you are going to his statement.
So this is Rawlings. And he didn't start from the endorsement before the House of Chiefs. He says, the corruption that is going on is so deep. Some aspects of these corruptions are literally holding your national resources to ransom by just a handful of people. I am not here to poison your minds at all, he said. Then he continues. There is no doubt in my mind that this competition is going to be between the NDC and the MPP. The question I'm asking is that are we, that is the MDC, because of our fear and nervousness of the MPP or the opposition, so worried about what could happen, that is in the event they lose the election, that we are prepared to forget everything that we may have done wrong just so we can stay in power, bury the evidence? And if we stay in power, what guarantee? What can you do to ensure that you clean up the corruption within your own party machinery, within your own government? He's still worried about the corruption. Then he makes a very classic statement. You could not do it in your first year. You could not do it in your second year. You could not do it in your third year. So indeed, when are you going to do it? Then he goes back to the initial theme. These handful of people are consolidating. They are holding your party and they are holding the economy of this nation to ransom. This is what is going on. This is the problem that we face. Then he makes the magic statement that has got the NDC very, very happy. The emergence of John Mahama has also added a spark to the governing party and therefore reduced the old fear and anxiety. In other words, he has brought on board the possibility of also winning the election. It became a very stressful situation for most of us. However, divine intervention created a great deal of goodwill for him, Mahama, on his Mill's demise, and also public sympathy also served a fine purpose in helping to ignite the hope within the party. If you mean well to want to fight corruption, if you are not going to devote 30–40% of time to fighting corruption from within your own government, you will fail. Now, let's look at these things a bit. Of course, His Excellency John Mahama must have brought a spark compared to former President Mills, who, as Kofi said, and all of Ghana is aware, was literally castle-ridden. He had to stay indoors. He didn't have the levels of energy required to appear in public and galvanize. You will recall the conflicting statements from his spokespersons about whether or not he will be out campaigning. Some were saying he will come and sit on the platform and not speak. Others were saying he would just come and wave and go away. Others were saying he would stay in the castle and work whilst the campaign is done.
But before that, he had done a nationwide tour.
Well, Nana Addo has done several nationwide tours. He's still on a nationwide tour. He's still campaigning. So you campaign to the very last day. And you are either visible or you are not. So clearly, a spark has been brought because there's a new president who has the energy to run. As distinct from when His Excellency in July said he had energy for yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and it turns out he didn't. Question though, are the new NDC so desperate? The new NDC led by His Excellency John Mahama, that new NDC which rejected the old NDC in Rawlings so profoundly, so completely in 2008. If you recall, in 2008, he had to go around on his own doing his own campaign. As it is, we don't know whether his effort helped them to win or lose. But it was clear that they wanted to distance themselves as far away from him as possible. If today...
And that was also to cure a mischief that you were taking advantage of, that a vote for males was a vote for former President Rawlings. He would literally take over the government of the nation. So that was an effective way of stopping you from continuing with that propaganda.
Either way, the question, do you still need him in the NDC to win and govern?
Now you
because if they pushed him away, and now they are desperate to bring him back. For me, after 3.5 years, in pushing him away, they should have demonstrated to the people of Ghana that they are capable of doing it without him. And by this time, as a party in government, ought to have consolidated their achievements to the point that we wouldn't now even be discussing whether or not Rawlings is endorsing them. Rawlings is not the government. Rawlings has complained bitterly about the way they've conducted themselves over the past 3.5 years. He is still complaining. He is telling us that a handful of people have grabbed our national resources and are consolidating a grip on those national resources that are detrimental to us. Deep corruption. That's what he's complaining about.
The corruption charges he has made so consistently.
So the question is, are the new NDC telling us that without the old NDC, they cannot win this election? If that is the case, then Ghanaians will look at it. Because if, assuming, without admitting, that Rawlings' comments and stance go to consolidate the NDC as a corporate body in order to position them to fight the election, everybody in Ghana knows that you have a very key middle group who are the swing, the so-called floating voters. They, I believe, will want to interrogate not only the spark, not only the possibility of winning, which exists for every political party, but also the concerns about corruption and integrity. So let's zero in on those concerns. He says, in 3 years, they haven't done it. The same people are still there. What has changed? Now, look at it carefully. When His Excellency President Mills,
and sorry, you believe ex-President Rawlings when he speaks about corruption and deep-seated corruption within the government? You believe him?
Oh, but I believe sincerely that this NDC government...
Now, I'm asking you that question because the opposition, has never believed in Rawlings.
The opposition believes, with or without Rawlings, the evidence is clear that there is a systematic conspiracy to rip this economy dry.
You spoke about Ghanaians asking questions about whether the NDC cannot do without the ex-President Rawlings. I'm sure that Ghanaians will also be asking the same question of you, that the Rawlings you don't believe in, you now choose to believe in him because it serves your purpose.
Something, because of this question, let me lay something very clear. The MPP's campaign does not depend on Rawlings' stand in the political space. The MPP's campaign is totally focused on the core areas that bother Ghanaians: the economy, education, health, integrity, including character. These are the things the MPP is running on. When another goes out there to speak, he doesn't say Rawlings is not with the NDC, so vote MPP. He says, I will offer you education. He says, I will give you clean government. He says, I will restore NHIS. The erosion of social interventions will be restored. Those are the things driving our campaign. But of course, it is important, like I said, Rawlings makes news. So it is our duty to help inform Ghanaians about the impact. But at the end of the day, only Ghanaians can determine the real impact of what Rawlings does or does not do when they go in to vote. When Ghanaians go in to vote, let us look at the issues as they are outstanding, because Rawlings observes and says, but we live it. We all live it. Corruption. We believe there is a systemic, organized conspiracy to rip this country's resources dry. And I'll just take three areas.
I wanted to take it just a little back and keep that because it's important to you. In 2008, you remember that the NDC clearly declared the 3 Johns for the campaign. So you had John Mahama, you had John Mills, and then you had John Rawlings, all taking 3 different directions in the campaign.
The John Matrix.
Yeah. So when has it been that they sort of, completely sought to abandon the Rawlings?
Let me tell you something interesting that is doing the rounds on the ground about the Johns. There's a song about the J winner. The first John had 19 years. You know him. Rawlings, 19 years. The second John had 8 years. You know him. Kufuor. The third John had 3.5 years. You know him. Yes. Now the fourth John has been vested with 4 months. So it's the law of diminishing returns.
What a voodoo calculation is this?
The law of diminishing. And this is going out there. This is out there. I have heard it from the ground and I was surprised.
Okay.
The person who told me is not a mainstream politician or otherwise. Somebody who met me in the street and said, look, Mr. Sabu, I've seen you on TV. Listen, this John business has finished. It has finished. Then he did the mathematics. It is okay. 19, 8, 3.5, 4 months. So the Johns are over. But it's important that we appreciate that the people of Ghana will interrogate the core issues. The people of Ghana, in this sense, being that delicate floating voter population, because over several elections now, it is clear that you have a chunk of voters who vote for the NPP, come what may. You have a chunk of voters who vote the NDC, come what may. Unfortunately for both parties, neither of those chunks drive you over the 50+1. Then you have the small parties, which historically have played a key role. Then you have the non-party, which is the spoiled ballots. That is a non-party, but if you were to really count them, it would have made a difference in the last election. Because the margin of victory was far less in percentage terms than the spoiled ballots. So you even have to count spoiled ballots in terms of illiteracy of the population and voting procedures and all that.
And you may end on this note. For political strategy, do we expect the NPP to come forward and to say once again that, look, the former president's endorsement of John Mahama once again means he's not going to leave John Mahama to rule freely, and so this is why Ghanaians should vote Mahama out? But
something, I have told you that endorsement or not is for the people of Ghana to determine. I don't see this, and I don't think the NPP sees this as an endorsement. And even if the NPP did, it wouldn't make much difference. Because how can you endorse somebody in one breath? You say that his government, his presidency, his party are corrupt. They lack integrity. They must return with integrity. The same people are there. The same issues have not been addressed. So what is the difference? You say the late president was taken away by divine intervention. And then the president himself says it was ultimate sacrifice. And yet before that, who was the bad person? Was it the late president surrounded by good people who have now come in place and God has taken away that bad person, giving them a new lease of life? Or was it that person who was good and the others were bad by some mystical celestial intervention? His death has made them good.
Do you find that you are suggesting that the ex-president so contradicts himself that he's such a bunch of contradictions that he should not be believed anyway? Now, I'll move on to you, Abdul Malik Kubako Jr.
You have concluded that I am saying that the man is a bunch of contradictions.
I've heard that before, walking some contradiction.
Even very bad.
I can't conclude like that.
Because
I haven't concluded like that.
Yeah, I don't think you concluded like that. But I've listened to your analysis. You admit so clearly that his emergence and his visibility has added something, which the former president was also talking about. So his conclusion is completely, I think, wrong. And a leader, a leader assembles his people.
Yeah, but let me learn. I haven't finished. You're taking me over.
You finish in 30 seconds.
Well, the question really is that to endorse or not to endorse, it depends on the floating voter population. Who, looking at the record over the years, would determine whether or not
Rawlings has a following.
Is that following core NDC or floating voter following?
But that following, you would have benefited from that following if he doesn't come back into the party.
Is he coming back with the NDP or NDC? That's what we are asking ourselves.
I put that question to Abdul Malik Okubako Jr. Now, how do you find the Rawlings statement?
Look, Rawlings said many things. And at this moment, it appears that one thing that you have highlighted, or the media has highlighted, is the purported endorsement. And you've asked us to interrogate that particular issue. If indeed what Rawlings said, and this is relative to the issue of a spark that President Mahama is supposed to have unleashed onto the political scene or within the NDC, and which, according to him, carries the possibility of victory. It is within this context that the whole purported endorsement is being conjured from. If indeed it is an endorsement, then I think it amounts to an indictment of the late former President Mills and his leadership and governance capacity.
How?
Yeah. Whose record, incidentally and paradoxically, President Mahama intends to ride on relative to election 2000. It's a very paradoxical situation. There's an inbuilt contradiction somewhere, and we need to take our time and appreciate the dynamics. I am saying that if suddenly there is a certain spark flowing from, and the way I hear him, he's talking of the goodwill that has arisen from the death, untimely, unfortunate death. They said by divine intervention. I'm not too sure about that. But if that is so, that goodwill has brought some benefits to the NDC, and for that matter, President Mahama, who is a candidate for the NDC in the forthcoming elections. And it has also brought visibility, according to my own brother, Mr. Adams, because of the thank you tours, all the goodwill messages, the role President Mahama inevitably and unavoidably played in ensuring that we as a nation and a people gave a fitting burial to our late former president. All this combined visibility, goodwill, sympathy has brought a spark. I am saying, then it means that before all this, and let's be fair to Mr. Rawlings, he had publicly said so, that the NDC had lost the elections way back. That thing, he had that metaphor about bus, I've forgotten, it slips me, manis, you know, you turn bus. So many things. So that's what it means. I am asking, I've been wondering, are the NDC communicators, strategists, are they in agreement with this assessment put out by President Rawlings? Are they in agreement? The track record that they are bringing to bear on election 2012 campaign is that they have done so well, splendidly so well, under the able leadership of former President Mills. May he rest in peace. And indeed, the incumbent president has not run away from that issue consistently. After all, he's just been in charge barely 2 months or so, and he has just about 4 or 5 months to finish the term of President Mills. Of course, he was a key member of the Mills administration, a very visible, active vice president to boot. Mr. Rawlings' assessment of Mr. Mills, or Professor Mills, and the quality of his governance is negative. So I cannot imagine how the so-called goodwill, the spark, the visibility would even bring about what you call a possibility of victory. So I have my own problems with the logic that the ex-president, that is Mr. Rawlings, is putting out there. But I'm amazed that there are people in the NDC who do not see the real effect of what he said. Now, if you move away from the spark, goodwill, sympathy, visibility, and come for the substance, he is talking here of corruption.
Before you move on to the corruption, Sorokoku,
sure.
Yourself as an astute political analyst and a senior journalist, have you not observed the positive that the John Mahama brings to the ticket now?
You know, I have seen the visibility. That I have seen. I have felt the goodwill, which was a goodwill that cut across the party divide. It was a national passion. It was an emotive thing that affected all of us. And many of us even suspended our critical scrutiny of the Mills administration for some 2-3 weeks. Political parties abandoned or suspended their campaigns across the nation. It was a totality of a national emotion. And that itself had its own dynamic. So every Ghanaian across the country, outside, even foreigners, joined us in generating that goodwill, that sympathy. As to whether a particular political party can capitalize on that and share or take all the benefits, that's another matter. I'm not prepared to go into that analysis. In any case, it will be purely speculative. I'll be wasting too much of my intellectual energy, the little that I have.
What Rawlings' statement seems to encapsulate is what some analysts have been very hesitant in being public with, that the NDC is in a better position with President Mahama going into the elections than it was with President Mills.
I am asking the NDC chaps whether they agree with that. So whether they concede that somewhere along the line, the good old professor had lost his shine. Do they agree to that? Okay, it's just that, yes, unfortunately, he died. We are all human beings. We could die any time. But before he died, or because of his absence in 1 or 2 trouble areas, are they today admitting that the purported or perceived ill health and lack of visibility and all those things, are they now admitting that it had actually injured the chances of the NDC? I didn't hear them say that. I never heard them say that. I'll be surprised if I hear them say that today.
Okay, well, I think you can move on to the other substantive matters that you wanted to point out, but I want to acknowledge the presence of Honorable Edu Asari, MP for Adenta, the Swagger Papa, is now in the house. Good morning and welcome to the show.
Thank you.
All right, Goku, proceed.
Why you move away from this sentimental, subjective things like goodwill, sentiment, sympathy, visibility, not that they are not important. We are human beings. All these things have their own effects. So I'm not saying they are not important, but I'm saying that compared to the other issues he launched, they are more substantive, the latter ones. If he's talking corruption, and the things he said there, I mean, Boabin has read
very
them,
damning.
Damning verdict. Damning verdict. And corruption, for one moment, I'm asking, was President Mahama
generally as an issue that affects the development of a country?
Yes,
but more specifically, he's not on the ruling government.
I'm with you. Yeah. I agree. The cost of corruption is injurious to all of us. It curtails our development. I agree. And there's corruption across this country. And there's no government that has come that was not affected by corruption, from the Great Nkrumah to today. That's true. I concede. But I'm saying that what we are looking at now is Rawlings talking of deep-seated corruption in the NDC administration, NDC 3 administration. Do you agree or you don't agree? He's saying it. These are very serious things. And you ask, was President Mahama not part of the Mills presidency? And the visibility that he's brought to bear on the campaign of the NDC has taken away the corruption indictment. He talks about recruitment into the armed forces that he says are crooked. You remember, you know, this is one of his refrains. He did it against the Kufuor administration. He spoke a lot about that. And he's still suggesting, and he links it to an incident in Tamale, where people were to exercise their human rights, freedom of association, freedom of assembly, freedom to demonstrate. And he talks about brutality that was meted out. He's talking here of an assault. Of course, you see, Rawlings sometimes is so contradictory and unfair to everybody, because he says that under his administration, that could never have happened. True or false? Please.
You are doing the analysis, please.
I mean, Kumi Praku demonstrations. He unleashed commandos from the castle to come and shoot into the crowd. And they killed 4 people. Oh, yes. It's documented. Yes. People from the 64 Infantry Regiment who were at the Sankara barracks at the castle. This is documented by the police inquiry report.
What did you do about this?
Please,
I saw you taking notes. I think you should continue with that.
You are now asking me another question. I am stating a fact that the police inquiry report, which was conducted under his own administration, unfortunately I didn't bring it here today, but it's well known, it's a public record. It's stated black and white. They came with a vehicle from the castle, a castle security vehicle, ARC or ACR 9110.
So meaning ordered by the president.
Oh, did I say that?
That's what you were saying.
No, I didn't say that, even though I wouldn't mind saying that. But that's not what I said. What I said was that he said under his administration, such an incident would not have happened.
You've taken a few.
And I'm giving examples. 1993, Killer Budget's demo, he unleashed ACDRs on us.
I hope you give me the time.
Please, I mean, it's not even a substantive point.
Yes, there's a brief time for you to be able to react.
It is not a substantive point, but Kofi is making me, I can give too many examples.
Yes, so
I have been a participant in demonstrations over the years, many of which were harassed and brutalized until we fought and brought the Public Order Act. We went to court. The MPP went to court, if you recall. I mean, it's here. It's on my fingertips. Don't let me relate history, because you see, we're dilating, we'll be deviating if we are not careful.
So move ahead.
But I make the point. So he talks here of a state of insecurity and violation of human rights under the NDC3 administration. As I said, it was being hypocritical and unfair, but because it happened under him. But that is the fact he's saying. Okay? He makes this point. And people say endorsement. You see, the media, we are entitled to choose which angles we want to in reporting. But I think that what we cannot do is to not to be factual. This was interpretation, the endorsement. I'm told one newspaper said, Rawlings said NDC will win, will win. That's what Rawlings said. The truth of the matter is that this whole purported endorsement is a creature of the media. Rawlings speaks, it's double speak, you see. He hangs left, right. He walks a tightrope. I can understand what Mr. Rawlings is doing today. After rubbishing the NDC3 administration for so long, I have a feeling that he wants to take advantage of the demise or the exit of President Mills to build some bridges. If I'm an NDC person, I wouldn't mind. I think President Mahama genuinely would want to build bridges. I believe so. It's in their interest. To be honest with you, as a political animal and a strategist, it's in their interest, collective interest, to build bridges. And Jerry Rawlings is finding ways and means. That's why when he went to Kumasi, he praised President Mahama for being proactive in dealing with some matter that he had been waiting to deal with for a year. That's a
nicer way to echo the sentiments of Dr. Kwesa White, who says this is a political opportunity.
Yeah, which he did, but it was a double-edged thing. While he praised President Mahama, which was positive, in virtually he was indicting state institutions for the inertia, again, who was presiding over that situation. You see, so please, the endorsement thing was a creature based on an interpretation of by the media. And here we are interrogating it. But deep down, he said very damning things about the NDC-3 administration, of which President Mahama was vice president and a key player.
All right. Now, Edward, sorry, Honorable Edward, sorry. In some 3 minutes, we want to move on. Sorry you came in late, but this is how you do it. In some 3-4 minutes, want to have your take on this subject of the Mr. Rawlings endorsing the NDC or not endorsing the NDC. What many have seen is plain endorsement anyway, but some also see a veiled endorsement, and others say this is double speak. Well, like Yawabwe Asamoah said, in many ways, Mr. Rawlings has done such damage to the NDC as a party and as a government. Such damage that some say this is irreparable damage. You can't want to welcome him so warmly onto the campaign, because that has the, the effect that will come with it.
Yeah, thank you very much, and sorry for coming in a bit late. The Rawlings subject, I think, will not leave us anytime soon. And so, personally, I have always held a certain view, especially after we took over as a government, NDC I mean, and the manner in which our founder has handled issues concerning the party, or whatever problems he's had with some members of the party, including the late president. For me, whatever we've read, because I didn't hear him speak, I've read reports on various...
We've actually been quoting him verbatim.
Exactly. And so, from what he said, I am a bit at a loss, because you, like Kweku tried to say earlier, you can't see where a clear picture. Where does he belong? What is his, what is going to be his posture? It's neither here nor there.
Kofi Adams explains that he belongs where he's always been.
Well,
principle, there is corruption. Get rid of it. However, Mahama has brought a spark that could get the party into power again.
You see, I tried to address this corruption issue when I got a platform 2 days ago on Asempa. And I have a challenge, because I started hearing about corruption from President Rawlings when I was a little boy. Corruption during the SMC 2, corruption during PNP, corruption during the NPP era.
And that's why he came into power anyway.
Yeah, so for me, the question then pops up. The era of the 19 years that he was president, did we have a clean, I'm putting clean in quotes, I mean, can't somebody also find something to say about his government?
But that shouldn't stop him from speaking about it.
That is okay. But you see, and my worry is that we don't pin, he doesn't pin anybody. It is thrown out there. Corruption, corruption, corruption. Is it about the police, or customs, or civil servants? Or, you see, let him zero down on somebody or some group of people, so that it doesn't look like all of us are stealing government money.
He doesn't say all the people. He says a few people.
Yes, a handful. Who are they? Where do they belong? What is their color? Let us know. Because if I'm sitting here, somebody could assume that I belong to that few people, whereas I am not, or I may not be. So for me, it's been this vague description of corrupt people This has been very consistent.
But the communication team is excited that, you know, he's done this good thing for the NDC.
Well, you see,
and is welcoming him.
For me, you see, I can sense the direction this whole thing is going.
Which direction is this?
I mean, it will take the few, let me say, whatever will unfold in the next 1 month with NDP for me to draw my conclusions, or to be able to draw my conclusions. Because as of now, yes, he played the politician card. I mean, he's an astute politician. He knows what time it is. He knows what to do at the right time, what to say. And exactly what he said is that, well, let's see what happens. Because right next door, it is perceived that his wife is also nursing some ambition to become president. Okay, so I am a bit careful when I'm analyzing this
His
issue.
wife is a citizen of this country whose political rights or rights to join a political party should not be joined to her being married to former President Rawlings.
Excuse me. That is why some of us, sorry, want to see where he really belongs and come strong on that.
They can disagree, can't they?
Why not?
Husband and wife, one decides what they want to do with
Wonderful.
their life.
So I am saying that.
Now, why should that affect what you think of the
you're not
Rawlings?
getting my point. What I'm saying is that I want, as at now, I am mixed up in my mind. I don't know where he belongs. Okay, I want to see where exactly he belongs, so that when he is talking, then I know this is an, we are dealing with ourselves, an intra issue. But if, on the other hand, he belongs to the NDP, then I know, or he goes to clear the seeming smoke
So you are giving a condition, a precondition that for which he would be admitted. As,
no, I don't have
let
the
me use
power
that.
to
Let me use that. Let me use that
Oh,
advisedly.
yes.
He would be admitted back into the party, full swing for party campaign. That is, if he doesn't show signs of supporting his wife or any way supporting the NDP. It is okay if he doesn't do that.
I personally see him as our founder, okay, and he is our founder. And Kofi, on the platform I had 2 days ago with him, explained it so well that he does not necessarily have to be what do you call it? His name registered at the EC to be the founder. We all know it is out of his government, there's a PNDC government, that NDC was formed. So certainly we see him as such. So I still think that he has this onerous responsibility to remain the founder as long as he wants to.
Sorry for butting again. If he shows support for the NDP, then it's over. All he's saying should not be taken. But if he does not, he's welcome.
I'm not saying it's over, or he has a right to criticize.
You say you're waiting to see what he does with the NDP.
You see, what you are not giving me the opportunity to express myself.
I want us to cut the chase. I want us to get to the meat.
Yes, but let me form some basis so I can, make myself very clearer. You see, my beef here is that Rawlings cannot be stopped, or President Rawlings, sorry, cannot be stopped from, saying what he says, which is so classic of him. We know his style. But I'm saying, you are earlier on saying that in this, with the demise of our late president, you quoted it, Yao, that the chances, or let me say, some spark has been introduced into the steam. What is the spark? Ekweku was also saying it. What has changed? Nothing much, because President Mahama has not done even what we call musical chairs for us to see that some things nothing has changed, especially in the real terms. So if there was any target of those corruption allegations, I'm sure they are still around. And I'm sure they are the ones he was addressing as the few people. So we want to know them. And we want also to know, as I said, whether or not the Rawlings factor will play a role in our chances. For us, I think anybody should not, because I was in Adenta and I worked hard. You were there, you saw the kind of, yes,
I was with you throughout.
That's right. And you saw the way, and that is what everyone in NDC needs. Just work hard in that small corner, and that is what wins elections.
All right.
Yes, their presence at your campaign, rally grounds and all of that. You see, rallies, how many NDC people go to NPP rally? Very few. How many NDC MPP people go to NDC rally? Very few. So it is your own crowd that most of these leaders go and excite.
I see. Now,
you understand?
We'll take a break at this point. My producers tell me we have to go for a quick commercial break. And when we return, we will go into bits of how what is happening could hurt the NDP very briefly. And then we answer the question as to what tape Bevlo Latte has been listening to. This is your most authoritative news analysis show, Newsfile. We'll be right back.